extremely happy that TII has the pleasure to host two outstanding speakers on a topic which is of extreme interest for TII and also for the region. The title of the talk is around basically an introduction to robust machine learning with geometric methods for defense applications. And the two speakers are specialists of geometric methods, which have been using for many years. And I see also that Frédéric has a nice poster just behind him, reassessing the organization of a conference that he did around these tools, and he's also a specialist on that. So I'll go rapidly on their bio. So for Frédéric, he's a senior Thales expert in AI at the technical department of Thales Land and Air Systems. And he's been working on basically a lot of topics around basically geometric methods. He's been awarded many awards, the 2014 Aimé Poisson Prize of the French Academy of Science for the application of science to industry, the Ampere Medal, the emeritus member of the SEE, and president of the SEC ISIC Club Information and Communication System Engineering. And he's been involved in a good mixture of, I would say, academic research and also industrial research by also being very impactful, basically in different, I would say, domains with a focus on geometric structures. For Pierre-Yves, he's graduated from a quite famous school called École Nationale des Ponts et Chaussées in 2011 with a major in applied mathematics and computer science. He started his career badly since he started with quantitative analysts in the financial industry. In general, this is a bad start, but then he recovered and decided to do something which is useful for the society and decided to work for software and cybersecurity matters, and then joined Thales Research and Technology as a research engineer starting January 2020. And now he's working in a broad domain related to trustworthy AI with applications which are around secure machine learning, geometric deep learning, stochastic modeling, and differential geometry. Okay, I think the floor is yours, and thank you again for your participation.
Okay, so Pierre will share the slide. And I will give just a few words. So the presentation is in two parts. So in the first part, Pierre-Yves Lagrave will present you techniques which are called equivariant neural network, which is in also in it is called geometric deep learning, and also a physics-informed neural network based on geometric structures. And in a second part, I will talk about statistic and Lie group machine learning. And what is important in this talk is how to capture the geometric structure of your problem to include this constraint of the structure in your algorithms to improve the performances. So I give the floor to Pierre-Yves.
Okay, thank you very much. So can you see the slides?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, so the first part of this presentation, as Frédéric said, will be about a technology which is called equivariant neural networks and their application to several problems. So I'm going to start by giving some motivation about that. So as you may know, neural networks are in general not very robust to geometrical transform of their input. So here in the animation, what you see is the result of the classification obtained after training CNN on the standard MNIST dataset as we rotate the input sample. So we see that there is definitely no robustness with respect to rotation for these algorithms. This lack of robustness is also becoming a problem when we think about privacy. So here, for instance, we have been able to retrieve the vertical and horizontal orientation of the plane which were used in the training set of a CNN just by looking at the output of the trained CNN. So that's also a problem from that standpoint, lack of robustness. Finally, the last point that is also important to have in mind is that even for off-the-shelf algorithms that we can find on the internet with pre-trained weights, for which there have been some significant amounts of time that has been spent for the training by using some methods like data augmentation. So even for this kind of algorithm, they do not provide perfect robustness with respect to this geometrical transform. So here, for instance, we see, so in blue, that's when the algorithm is correct, and in red, when the algorithm is not correct. So we see that there are still some area as we rotate the input for which the algorithm is going to give the bad result. So as I was saying, there are several methods that can be used in order to make the algorithm more robust, and one of them is data augmentation. So this is something which is widely used currently because it's quite simple and it's very easy to implement. However, this approach has several drawbacks, and two of them are, for instance, that there is no guarantees about the behavior of the trained algorithm with data augmentation. You cannot have formal guarantees on the behavior. The other thing is that by using data augmentation, we are basically spending some capacity of the network to learn the invariance from the data themselves, and the capacity we are spending to do that is not used for extracting relevant feature for the considered task. So in order to palliate that, what we can do is to use what we call correct by design algorithm, in which we are going to directly encode some properties into the design of the algorithm. So by doing so, we have better performances, and also we are able to reach a higher degree of robustness because we are spending all the capacity into the feature extraction process. The correct by design algorithm, they are also very appealing from a safety standpoint because we can have some guarantees on their compartment. So verifying that the behavior is correct for correct by design algorithm only amounts to checking that the implementation of the algorithm is correct. So I am now going to say a few words about what we call group convolutional neural networks, so GCNN, by building some intuition on the use of convolutional neural networks, so the CNN, for image processing. Because as we will see, GCNN can be understood as kind of generalization of group convolutional of CNN. Sorry. So let me start by by saying a few reminders about the 2D convolution operator that is conventionally used in usual CNN. So how does it work? We have a kernel function. Here we have an original image, and what we do is to compute a convolution image, here psi of x, by evaluating the convolution map, which is given here by a discrete sum. What is interesting is that this convolution operator is what we call the equivariant with respect to translation, in the sense that, as you can see on the animation here, if we translate the original image, then the convolution map is also going to be translated accordingly. What is also interesting to notice is that this convolution can actually be written as an integral over R2, a continuous integral, and that by evaluating the convolution, we are just basically discretizing this operator. So what we will be interested in doing in the following is to generalize this convolution operator in order to make it equivariant with respect to other transform than translation, because this one has no reason to be equivariant to other transform than translation. So in order to do so, we will need some kind of framework in order to generically represent what is a transform, and we are going to do it by working with some group theory. So in the following, a group will be a set of transforms that we can combine together. So the definition is a bit simplified compared to the real one, but that will be enough for what we want to convey today. So in the 2D plane, we have several groups of interest, and three of them are the translation group, that is denoted R2, the rotation group, denoted SO2, and what we call the special Euclidean group, so SE2, which is the group of isometry preserving transforms. So the element of this group here are a combination of rotation and translation. So these groups, they can act on the data. So here you have the example of the action of the three above group on a single image. What is interesting is that for a continuous group of transforms, so which are called Lie group, there is a very powerful theory, so which is due to Sophus Lie, and which in particular states that there exists a finite dimensional space, which is called the Lie algebra, which conveys some significant information about the general structure of the group. So that's very good because in practice, we are very happy to work in, with finite dimension, especially from a numerical standpoint. So now that we have this framework, we can define a generalized version of the convolution operator. And how are we going to do it? We do it by integrating over the generic group G instead of the group of translation R2 for the conventional convolution operator, and by also integrating with respect to a measure which is called the R measure of the group. By doing so, we have a generalized version of the convolution operator, which is equivariant with respect to the action of the generic group G. Now I'm going to explain how we can, for instance, compute a group convolution by taking the example of SE2. So how does it work in practice? In order to compute the SE2 convolution, we first take here a kernel, so we change the detecting the eyes here, and we apply a standard convolution in 2D. We obtain here a first convolution map in which we have detected the eyes. Then we apply a rotation to our kernel, and we do exactly the same thing. So we have a new convolution image, so on and so forth, so that we obtain a stack of 2D convolution image indexed by t. If we forget about the discretization effect, what we have is a three-dimensional convolution image indexed by x, y, and t. So a SE2 convolution map is now a three-dimensional object. Now I'm going to illustrate the equivariance property with respect to some rotation. So what I do is to apply a rotation to the original image. I redo exactly the same process as before in order to compute the new SE2 convolution image. So I obtain something which is again three-dimensional. And what I can see is that the detection of the eyes has been shifted along the theta axis consistently with the rotation that I have applied to my original image. So this is exactly the generalization property of the equivariance that we were aiming for to the rotation index. So now that we have this generalized version of the convolution operator, we can build what we call group convolutional neural network, so GCNN. So this GCNN, they have a very similar structure than conventional CNN, except that basically we are replacing the R2 convolution operator by their generalized version over general group G. We have also ways of generalizing the pooling operation, so local pooling or even global pooling, in order to make the neural network invariant with respect to a specific type of transform. So you can see that here on the animation, where we have compared the classification obtained with standard CNN and CNN that has been made here invariant with respect to the rotation. What we can see is that as we rotate the original image, the classification is not going to be changed in that case, while for the CNN, it is going to be not robust. So these GCNN, they have already been used for several applications in the literature. However, the underlying groups that are involved are very limited, meaning that we are always trying to achieve equivariance with respect to translation, rotation, the combination of the two for the spatial Euclidean group, so in 2 or 3 dimensions. And when dealing with graph data, we are more interested in invariance with respect to permutation. So the permutation group is also well treated in the literature. So the takeaway here is that basically, if we want to apply this kind of framework for data subject to non-classical symmetries or subject to geometry, which is also not very popular in the literature, then we need some additional work in order to make that practical. Something which is also interesting with GCNN is that in addition of providing robustness with respect to geometrical transform, there are some evidences that they have also an increased robustness with respect to local type of perturbation. Like for images, they have also appeared to be more robust with respect to adversarial attack. So here we have conducted a very simple testing to show that. We have compared, we have considered 3 different neural networks. So here, fully connected, a standard convolutional neural network, and a neural network equivariant with respect to SE2. that have been trained on MNIST here, and we have applied to several adversarial attacks like FGSM, PGD, and Deepful. We have computed for FGSM and PGD the fooling rate of the three neural networks for several size of perturbation, and also for Deepful, we have considered a fixed number of iterations, and we have looked at the distribution of the size of the adversarial example that were generated. And what we can see in that in all the cases, the equivariant neural network with respect to SE2 has an increased robustness, so lower fooling rate for a given size of perturbation and higher expected size for the adversarial perturbation. So this is also quite interesting to have that in mind. Also, for now, there is not much about that in the literature, and of course, this simple testing is definitely not the proof. So now I'm going to give some example of usage for equivariant neural network. So we have a paper that is available on HAL, in which we are trying to give some formal introduction to this notion with some example of application. So you have many surveys that are also available. So here we are trying to be pedagogical, so we are not entering too much into the details, but we are giving some references to our very good papers that were published this year, in which you have a very, very nice introduction to these tools with the mathematical formalism as well. So the first application that I would like to highlight is the use of equivariant neural network for fisheye image processing. So fisheye images that you can have example here are images with a spherical geometry. So these images are not very well suited for the processing with a standard CNN, because first, in that case, we have to project the image into a plane. So this introduces some distortion effect, and this distortion effect, they are not well handled by standard CNN. So what we would like to do instead is to consider the image in the native spherical geometry, and then to build a neural network which is going to be equivariant with respect to SO3. So SO3 is the group of rotation in the three-dimensional. So if the image lies on the sphere, then we can achieve equivariance with respect to rotation of the sphere. So that's basically exactly what equivariance with respect to SO3 means. Another thing which is interesting with that problem is that we are also considering what is called gauge symmetries. So when you consider here a kernel on the sphere, you have several ways of parametering it, and we can exploit the fact that we want a kernel that is going to be independent with respect to the choice of coordinates. So this kind of gauge symmetries can also be exploited in order to make the algorithm more robust. So we have patents in progress, so I won't be able to expand much more on that, but yes, this is definitely something that we are interested in, and for which we believe that equivariant neural network can be quite a good fit. What is also interesting with equivariance is that we can combine it with some other source of knowledge in order to build what we call a hybrid AI approach. So in the previous slide, I have explained that basically we can achieve generic equivariance by building some generalization of the convolution operator, but that's not the only way of doing it. And actually, we can also achieve equivariant operator by leveraging on differential operators. So if we take the example of image processing task, it is well known that basically we can extract some features by diffusing some PDEs. So here you have an example. You take as your initial condition your original image. You apply here a 2D heat equation, and you can extract some feature. So what is interesting here is that because the Laplacian, so the differential operator that you have here, is invariant to rotation and translation, the diffusion process is something which is going to be equivariant, in the sense that, as you can see on the chart here, if I diffuse the PDE and then apply a rotation, it is going to give me the same result as first rotating the original image and then diffusing the PDE. So this mechanism can actually be generalized by leveraging on a theory which is called the differential invariant theory, so that we can build PDEs, which are going to lead to equivariant feature with respect to a generic group G. So we have leveraged on this idea to write a paper, which was published as a Spring Symposium of AAAI conference this year, in which basically we are parameterizing this type of PDE and then embedding them into the structure of a neural network and considering the parameter of the PDE as trainable parameter of the network. So what is interesting with that PDE formulation is that in addition to the equivariance property, we can embed some other type of prior knowledge, like for instance, if you want to extract a specific type of feature or perform some specific transformation to the original image when we deal with image processing task, then we can do it by restricting the space of the PDE that we can consider. Staying in the field of PDE, but with a completely different view, we can also use neural network to solve PDEs. So how does it work in practice? Instead of using a numerical scheme like finite difference or finite elements, we can leverage on the fact that neural networks are universal approximators, and in particular, we can use them to approximate the solution of the PDEs. So these techniques are called physics-informed neural networks. So there is a wide range of literature on that, and it has been shown that they allow to achieve better performance than PDEs or than finite differences or finite elements, and in particular, they have. It has been shown that they allow to reach results that were not accessible with the finite differences, for instance. So from the equivalence standpoint, what is interesting is that PDE in practice, so in physics, they are very structured and they have some symmetries. And here the idea with the equivalent neural network will be to use neural network in which the symmetries of the PDEs are accounting for so that we can have a faster convergence or increased stability of the corresponding numerical scheme. So there is some work along that in the literature. However, for now, this is very limited to some specific case, and we are working on our side on a generalization of that, and we have actually a paper which is in preparation with respect to this. Finally, the last application I wanted to highlight was about reinforcement learning. So the idea here of using neural network is equivalent neural network is in order to exploit the knowledge of symmetries in the state action of the Markov decision process as to reduce the size of the solution space. So here, let's say we have a state here with the standard use case. We have the corresponding policy, which is this one. Then if we have a symmetry with respect to this space, so we consider now this space, which is really symmetric to this one, then we have some good knowledge about what the corresponding policy should be. So we want to encode that into the design of the algorithm, and what this is actually what has been recently done in a paper dated from January 2021. And it has been shown, of course, that by considering smaller solution space, then we can achieve better convergence rates. So just to conclude this part, a quick highlight about some work that we have been conducting at Thales with respect to the use of equivalent neural network for radar processing tasks. So here the idea was to combine equivariance, the mechanism of equivariance that we have been discussing, with some hyperbolic geometry. So we have two papers on this topic for which we have the reference here if you are interested in knowing more. So I won't have the time to enter too much into the detail, but basically the idea that we had for this work was to generalize some existing approaches that were recently developed by some PhD at Thales, so Daniel Brooks and Jan Kavan, for which they are building algorithm, machine learning algorithm to process covariance matrices for radar signal classification. So what we wanted to do is to increase the robustness of such approaches by introducing some equivariance mechanism. So the idea here was basically to represent so each cell of the space here that we have in the matrix here by an autocorrelation matrix. And what is interesting is that the type of autocorrelation matrix that we obtain can be put in isomorphism with some hyperbolic space. with the hyperbolic space, we have, on this hyperbolic space, we have an action of a group, which is called SU11. So we know how to transform elements of the space. So we can consider building equivalent neural network with respect to the action of this group. So here, from a technical standpoint, there are several challenges because SU11 is a group which is not compact, so it's quite hard to build the convolution operator. And also the hyperbolic space D and the product of D is not going to be Euclidean. So there are really some technical challenges associated with that. What we have been obtaining is that basically the equivariant neural network that we have built are being shown to be more robust than the classical version of the neural network, so with no mechanism of equivariance. So we have shown that on simulated data, and more recently, we have been able to confirm that on real data. So I will stop here because I won't have much time, but if you have some more questions, we have put here a list of references, including our paper with respect to the last application on the radar system. So thank you very much, and I give the floor to Frédéric now.
Okay, so so I propose to share the slide, Pierre.
Yes, yes. I'm just trying to
disconnect. Or...
Yes.
Okay. So could you see my slide?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so the second part is about statistic on machine learning on Lie groups, which is they are using same mathematical tools based on Lie groups, but it's different. In this case, the data are element of Lie groups, or data are on homogeneous manifold where Lie group act transitively. So how to make statistics on machine learning on this kind of data. So I will talk about two scientists, French scientists, Jean-Marie Souriau, which was a physicist, which has introduced geometric mechanics and symplectic structure of geometric mechanics, and Jean-Louis Causul, which was a PhD student of Henri Cartan, which has studied some domain of geometry, which is called homogeneous bounded domain. And we will see that there is a close connection between these two works, and they were two graduated students from École Normale Supérieure in Paris. So this is a personal history of deep learning. So in 2016, Yann Olivier from CNRS and Gaëtan Marceau-Caron, which was a PhD student of Thales, have worked together when Gaëtan was a postdoc in LRI Orsay, in Paris Orsay University, and they have introduced natural gradient, extended natural gradient of information geometry for deep learning. And in 2017, so Yann Olivier was recruited by Facebook Paris, and Gaëtan came back to Canada and was recruited by Mila Laboratories, and they have extended this gradient, natural gradient, with a stochastic Langevin gradient, and they call that the natural Langevin dynamics. So it mixes natural gradient from information geometry and stochastic gradient from stochastic approach. And so deep learning could be applied to other structure like graph. And in 2018 at ETH Zurich, they have introduced first deep learning on Lie group. And more recently in China, a book has been also published on Lie group machine learning. Our approach is different. It is based on a theorem of Souriau that when you have a Lie group, you can consider the homogeneous symplectic manifold that is associated to this Lie group. And so the problem of machine learning on Lie group is transferred to the problem of machine learning on homogeneous symplectic manifold. on this symplectic manifold are given by what we call the Lie group coadjoint orbit, which has been introduced by Jean-Marie Souriau in France, by Costan in US, and by Alexandrovich Kirillov in Russia. So what is the main concept behind Lie groups machine learning? So we are using different concepts like structures. We are looking for geometric structure, Lie group structure, but it is also related to Poisson and symplectic structure. It is also related to invariance, so especially to the Fisher metric in information geometry that has been extended by Koszul on convex cone and by Souriau on symplectic manifold. We could introduce also Gibbs densities that are covariant, and other tools are what we call Souriau moment map, which is a geometric definition of Noether theorem. And also we use a concept of representation theory, which has been introduced by Russian mathematician Kirillov on coadjoint orbit. It is also related to calculus of variation because the gradients that we will, the flows that we will introduce are based on calculus of variation. So related to Poincaré-Cartan integral invariance and also Euler-Poincaré equation, on to the Maxwell principle as been defined by Souriau in his book. It is also related to entropy because to extend statistics in this abstract space, we have to extend the notion of entropy. Why? Because if you want to define what is a Gaussian density, it is given by the definition that it is a density of maximum entropy. So you have to define first what is entropy. And with this theory, we can characterize the entropy by what we call invariant Casimir function in coadjoint representation. So it is very new, I think so, because it is a pure geometric definition of entropy. And then when you have this general definition, you can define maximum entropy probability density. And it is very useful to define statistics, law, and families for Lie groups. And what is very interesting with this intrinsic approach is that it is a coordinate-free approach. So we have a Fisher metric, which is independent of the parametrization, also the natural gradient. And we could define also geometric and symplectic integrators, which are preserving the moment map, the symplectic structures, and the energy. If you are less familiar with the mathematical tools, I invite you to look at the GitHub of these libraries, which is called GeomStat, which has been initiated by the team of Xavier Pennec at INRIA, Sofia, and by his PhD student, Nina Miolan, which has was a postdoc in Stanford, and they have develop a library which is called GeomStat, on which address computation statistic on manifold with geometric structures, so also geometric manifold on Lie groups. Recently, we have organized different conferences to popularize this approach. So, first one at École de Physique des Houches in France, with the topic Joint Structure and Common Foundation of Statistical Physics, Information Geometry, and Inference for Learning. And a book has been published by Springer on geometric structure of statistical physics, information geometry, and learning. So this seminar was to make the bridge between the different approach developed in statistical physics and in machine learning in artificial intelligence. And you have also a link to YouTube of this seminar. More recently, as said by Pierre-Yves, we have organized at Sorbonne University with Sky Sorbonne. So Sky is a Sorbonne Center for Artificial Intelligence in Paris, but we have also Sky Sorbonne in Abu Dhabi. and also in collaboration with ELIS, which is a European structure for advanced laboratories in Europe working on machine learning on advanced artificial intelligence system. On the proceeding has been edited by Springer. And just to inform you that we will also organize next year in July a conference at Institut Henri Poincaré, which is a MaxEnt conference about maximum entropy so Bayesian and maximum entropy method in science and engineering, and we will address this topic on geometric statistical mechanics and physics, and Lie group thermodynamics and maximum entropy densities. And also, just to inform you that I will organize at GRITSI 22 in Nancy also a special session that will be dedicated to statistics and learning on Lie group. So if you are interested to submit a paper for this French conference. So what is information geometry, natural gradient, and Lie group machine learning? Information geometry is not a new topic. It has been introduced last century, mid of last century by Rao. If you are familiar with Cramer-Rao bound, you know that the covariance matrices of an estimator is bounded by a lower bound, which is the inverse of the Fisher matrix, which is I theta in this slide, that you could obtain by the Taylor expansion of the Kullback divergence. So it means that you can define a metric in the space of parameter of density of probability, and on the right you can see that this metric is invariant by change of parametrization. So this is an illustration for Gaussian density. You can compute the Fisher metric, which is given by the standard deviation of the Gaussian law, and you can compute the Fisher metric, which is in the center of the slide. And if you have a G-meter, you could observe that this metric is a metric of the upper half plane of Poincaré. Why we are recovering the upper half plane is because the mean is a real value and the standard deviation, the space of parameters of the Gaussian density are in the upper half plane. And so by what we call a Cayley transform, you can transform the upper half plane in a Poincaré unit disk. And what is very interesting that you can represent one Gaussian density by 1 point in the unit disk. So it's also interesting because if you want to compute the distance in terms of information geometry between two Gaussian density, it will be given by the geodesic in the Poincaré unit disk. In the 90s, sorry, for machine learning, we are familiar with gradient descent algorithms, which is applied on the loss function. But we can extend. It has been extended by the professor Amari. During the 90s with what he calls the natural gradient, and he has just modified the classical gradient of the machine learning by multiplying by the inverse of the Fisher matrix. So what is the property of this flow is that you are invariant by parametrization. But the problem in 90s, it was very difficult to extend this approach for very large neural networks. So it was dedicated to a small neural network, but not for deep machine learning, deep learning. And so it has been extended by Yann Olivier and Gaëtan Masseau-Caron. We are now working at Facebook Paris and Mila in Canada for Masseau-Caron. So they have extended this gradient for deep learning, and they have also introduced a mixed with Langevin dynamics that they call the natural Langevin dynamics, where you have on this slide in the center you have the natural gradient with the inverse of the Fisher matrix, and you have an additional term for the Langevin dynamics. Here you have the main structure of information geometry. You define first a function phi, which is a minus log of the Laplace transform. And if you take the Hessian of this function, you define a metric in the parameter space of density of probability. And by a Legendre transform, you can make a Legendre transform to a dual function S, and this dual function is, in this case, the Shannon entropy. So the Shannon entropy, this one definition, is a Legendre transform of the minus log of the Laplace transform. So it is a very general definition. You have two systems of coordinates, theta and nabla, and
Pierre-Yves, est-ce que tu peux appeler Frédéric?
Yes. I am doing that. I am checking if he.
Very good. Thank you. Yeah. So for everybody, Pierre-Yves will call Frédéric just to check the issue, and we should get back the audio and also hopefully the video quite rapidly. Okay, I'm seeing Frédéric has another connection. Thank you, Frédéric.
Okay, sorry.
No problem.
I will reshare my slide. Could you say, Pierre-Yves, when I stopped, I was disconnected?
Slide 37. Legendre transform.
Okay. I have a problem. I cannot share my slide. So sharing. I will go to the room of.
No problem. I mean, you can go. You can go and change room to get a better connection. So this is for the audience, of course. I mean, you can go Pierre-Yves.
Yeah, we have a problem because it seems like the old session of Frédéric is still sharing his slides. So I don't know if you can, as an administrator, kill its session so that I can share the screen.
So I don't know if Sahid is online. I mean, I'm not having the hands-on, but let me just check if I can kill.
Parce que je peux pas partager. Ah. Dis-lui. Yeah. Là, on voit les planches. Ouais, mais et quand ça a été déclaré. Je peux pas te. Ah, je suis connecté 2 fois.
Ouais, t'es connecté.
Yeah, he went to stop its first connection.
Yeah, as I was saying, for all the attendees, of course, you can prepare your questions, and when the talk will be finished, you just need to raise your hand, or you can talk directly if you have some points you would like to mention. De mon côté, j'arrive pas à tuer la session. Ah, il y a un truc qui est parti, ouais, de Frédéric. Ok. Il y a une session qui est partie.
La deuxième, elle reste.
Ouais.
Bon? Non. Yeah, Frédéric has switched off his computer, but yeah, we can't.
Yeah, no,
Il peut partager?
Non,
ouais.
personne ne peut pas.
Pierre-Yves, tu peux partager, toi?
Non. Je peux pas. On me dit que c'est quelqu'un qui a la main dessus. En fait, il y a les slides de Frédéric qui sont toujours présentés.
Ok. Je vais envoyer un message à Sahil rapidement là. Sahil, are you online?
Yes, please.
Oh, Sahil, yeah. So we have an issue where we would like to kill the previous session of Frédéric so that he can, or you can give the hand back to Frédéric. We had an issue. I don't know if you can give him back the hand. Or give the hand. Yeah.
He wants the link back.
He cannot share the screen. He cannot share the screen.
Okay, I'll check once. Okay, no worries. Hi, Frederick, if you can try now, please.
No, we can't. We can't share. It seems like there is still a presentation going on, so we can't share our screen.
Okay.
So Pierre-Yves, you're the one you're the one sharing now?
Yeah. Frédéric is with me.
Okay, Sahil, give the hand to Pierre-Yves. Not Frédéric. Give the hand to Pierre-Yves.
All right. Hi, Pierre, can you now?
Yes.
Okay, so I just say that you have this very generic structure in information geometry. So a Legendre transform between the minus log of the Laplace transform and the entropy on two dual system of coordinates.
I'm not seeing the slides. I don't know if the others are seeing the slides.
No, the slides are not visible, Pierre.
The slides are not visible, Pierre-Yves or Frédéric. Did you share?
Yes, we were sharing.
Sahil, kill maybe the. Oh yes, from my side. You can see the slide, Amor. Okay.
I cannot see the slide.
Is the slide? Okay. So this information geometry structure has been extended by Kozul. So Kozul has just generalized with Ernest Zinberg in Russia to define the function in the minus log of the Laplace transform, no more on a R Euclidean space than on a convex cone omega, a sharp convex cone. And Kozul has introduced a one form, which is the first derivative of this function, and a second Kozul form, which is related to covariant derivative, second derivative of this function. And this second Kozul form is an extension of the Fisher metric. So it's a very general result of Kozul. I have no time to present that. So this idea has been extended in the chapter 4 of the book of Souriau to define a new structure, but this is exactly the same formula. You have the minus log of a Laplace transform. The Fisher metric is the Hessian of this function. And you have a Legendre transform on the entropy on this function. But what is different is that the Laplace transform is defined on M, and M is a symplectic manifold, and it is related to the coadjoint orbit, so the duality algebra, by a function which is called the moment map. It is a function from the symplectic manifold M to the dual Lie algebra. And what is different that you have the new variables are in Lie algebra and dual Lie algebra. So beta is an element of the Lie algebra, and Q is an element of the dual Lie algebra. So in thermodynamic, beta is a Planck temperature and Q is a heat. But it's just a generalization of information geometry. What is the main property? Previously, we have seen that the Fisher metric is invariant with respect to change of parametrization. Here, the Fisher metric I is invariant under the action of the group. So AD means adjoint operator. So this is the action of the group on beta, which is an element of the Lie algebra. So the Fisher metric is invariant under the action of the group, and also the entropy, which is dependent of the variable Q, which is an element of the dual Lie algebra. So I have no time to explain the geometric structure, but you have a general definition by Souriau of this Fisher metric. So you can compute this metric in very general case. And Souriau has introduced what is not very well known in mathematics, is what is called the affine coadjoint action. Classically, in a Lie group, you are considering the coadjoint operator. So this is the action of the group. So it's AD star. It's the action of the group on the dual Lie algebra, because Q is an element of the dual Lie algebra. But Souriau has observed that in some cases, you have an additional term that he called the symplectic cocycle. But you recover what he called a Lie group thermodynamic. So you have here the Lie algebra, here the dual Lie algebra. When you have the action of the group, you have the adjoint operator on beta. The action of the group of Q is a coadjoint operator with the Souriau cocycle. We could observe that the entropy is invariant under the action of the group. It is a function, a real function parameterized by the dual Lie algebra. And phi is not preserved, but as the information metric is a Hessian, and you are linear with respect to beta, it is invariant. And what is very important for statistics on Lie group is that with this model, you can define a Gibbs density, which is a covariant under the action of the group. You have also, you beneficiate also of a new definition of entropy. So entropy, it is a function parameterized on the coadjoint orbit on the dual Lie algebra, and which is invariant under the action of the group. And it is very well known in geometry and mechanics. It is called Casimir function. The name has been given after the work of Hendrik Casimir, which was a PhD student of Niels Bohr and Paul Ehrenfest. And it is introduced in his PhD, which is called Rotation of a Rigid Body in Quantum Mechanics. So what is it's very new, is because you have now a geometric definition of entropy. An entropy is a Casimir function in coadjoint representation invariant under the action of the group. So it means that for abstract space, you have to define your Casimir function to define entropy. So it's not axiomatic like for Shannon, but it's a pure geometric definition of entropy. So I have no time to give a general definition of what is a Casimir function, but because we need a Poisson geometry. But we could define what we call a Poincaré-Souriau-Fourier heat equation. So you can define a heat equation, a geometric heat equation. So I will just finish by giving you an example. So if you want to make statistic for the group SU11, which is very useful because it is a group acting on the Poincaré unit disk. And people are interested in machine learning by Poincaré unit disk because you can embed graph isometrically in a Poincaré disk, or with topic presented by Pierre in the previous talk. So if you take the group SU11 is this kind of matrices with A and B, which have complex value with this constraint. So you can define the Lie algebra. It is also a matrix which is given by nabla and R. R is real and nabla is complex. And you have a basis, U1, U2, and 3, which is the basis of the Lie algebra. You can define the dual Lie algebra. It is also a matrices, which is given by the X, Y, and Z. X, Y, and Z are real value. And you have a basis of this dual Lie algebra, which is given by these three matrices. And what is an important tool is a Souriau coadjoint orbit, which is a G, which is a map from the symplectic manifold. In this case, this is a Poincaré unit disk to the coadjoint orbit, so to the dual Lie algebra, which is in fact the hyperboloic cheat, which is obtained by stereographic projection, inverse stereographic projection. So in green, you have what we call the coadjoint orbit, and in gray, you have the Poincaré unit disk. So you can consider the Poincaré unit disk as a symplectic manifold. So you can rewrite this moment map of Souriau in a matrix form also. So you could observe that this matrix is an element of the dual Lie algebra because it has this structure. But it is a map from the Poincaré unit disk because Z is in the Poincaré unit disk. And this structure is in the dual Lie algebra. So the formula of Souriau is very simple. The Gibbs density is given by the duality bracket between this element of the dual Lie algebra and this element of Lie algebra, which is which has the role of Planck temperature in classical thermodynamics and Gibbs function. So to recover the good parametrization of Gaussian density, you have just to invert the function given beta with respect to Q, because in the direct form, you have Q with respect to beta.
We're not hearing. At least I am not.
Okay. No. I cannot. I almost finish. So okay. What is more interesting is that you can extend to SPD matrices, so covariance matrices, which is very useful in telecommunication, for example, for Merwan. What is a Gaussian density for SPD matrices? So the idea is to consider that SPD matrices, it is in fact the purely imaginary axis of the upper Siegel plane. So the upper Siegel plane is like the Poincaré upper plane, but it is for matrices. So you have a matrices X plus EY, where X and Y are symmetric and Y is positive definite. So why is important to consider SPD as an element of this space? Because this space is homogeneous, and you have a new group acting on this space. It is SUNN, is an extension of SU11. And you can define the Souriau moment map, and you can define the Gibbs density by this expression of Gibbs density. So to synthesize this approach, on the left you have Lie group supervised learning, and on the right you have Lie group non-supervised learning. So on the right, for non-supervised learning, what do you need? You need a metric, and the metric between elements of the Lie group are given by the Souriau-Fisher metric, so extension of Fisher metric, which are defined on the coadjoint orbit. And then, as soon as you have metric, you can apply computation of Fresh geodesic barycenter on Hermann Karcher flow for non-supervised clustering. You can use also mean shift technique used in non-supervised learning for Lie group. On the left, the classical gradient has been replaced by geodesic natural gradient on Lie algebra. And you have density, which is given by Souriau maximum entropy density. And we are working on replacing also the classical gradient by a symplectic integrator, which have other properties. So I've just finished, just 3 slides to give you motivation. What is important to make a machine learning on Lie group. It is useful in robotic. Here you have example of the LSTM network working on SO3 Lie group, which is called VNet. So it is useful in robotic because your brain in your vestibular system also use Lie group structures, as has been studied by Daniel Benquin and Alain Berthoz. It could be used also to study the articulated 3D movement, because if you consider a skeleton of a human and you consider his movement, you can describe it as a path on a product manifold of Lie group. So you can consider SO3 or SO3. So each articulation could be defined as a rotation and could be described by a SO3 matrices. So you have a time series of a vector with each element is a Lie group. And so you have to learn what is a movement. So recognition of articulated movement has many applications, on many laboratories work on that. You have here many examples of Lie group machine learning approach for movement studies. Another more recent one on path signature on Lie group. And what is perhaps more attractive for you is that recently in 2017, Nickel has proved that you can embed a graph on a Poincaré disk in an isometric way. And so it is very useful if you want to make machine learning on this graph to embed Z on the Poincaré unit disk and make machine learning on this space. So it's why it's very important to be able to make machine learning on deep learning in the Poincaré unit disk. And the Poincaré unit disk is an homogeneous space, and you have a Lie group which acts on this element. Okay, so thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Frédéric and Thierry, for your presentation, and sorry for the interruptions. I hope the people were still able to capture the main information. So I'm going to ask some questions to the audience. Are there some questions that you want to raise? So there's one question from Renato, which is, I think, too general, but maybe you can respond. He says, I didn't understand the advantages of this formulation. So is it a reinterpretation of machine learning algorithms as they are? I think that's what he means. Or are we coming up with some new ways of doing of building machine learning algorithms?
The first part, Thierry will. It's about the global talk, or the first part, or the second part? Or?
I think it's the Lie group machine learning. I mean, Renato maybe can comment. It's about the Lie group machine learning approach. So here, basically, what is the benefit, basically, that you get from that? Is it because let's say the following? If you look at statistical physics methods, basically, which are being used today in machine learning, they are more or less given interpretation of how deep neural network works. Of course, you have ways also to optimize the parameters, but are we in the same trend with this Lie machine learning group, or by going forward, we'll be inventing new kinds of machine learning algorithms?
I think for equivariant neural network, Pierre-Yves could explain you that, in fact, if you can use augmented approach on applying the geometric transformation to your data set, but you will need a bigger neural network because you have more data to learn, and so more parameters, and so you are less robust because you have too much parameters. So with equivariant neural network, you can reduce the number of parameters because you have less data set to learn. And the second property is that it is robust by design. So in terms of safety, if you have in a critical system, you can prove that your classification performances will be the same for any geometric transformation. So this is for the first approach. For the second one, it's a different approach. The data we are considering are data which are Lie group. If you are looking at articulated movement, you take a rotation of each of your articulated members, and say, then you have a time series of rotation. And this rotation are coded in SO3 Lie group. And what is the property of Lie group is you are independent of the parametrization. It's why it has been introduced in mathematics, because you are not dependent of the parametrization. Mm-hmm. And second application of Lie group machine learning is when you consider a manifold, homogeneous domain, which is a domain which is homogeneous. So it means that a Lie group acts transitively on this manifold. And then the idea is that you will not represent your data by their coordinates, but as the action of the group with respect to the origin. So you are fully independent of the parametrization. And in geometric mechanics, what they have introduced is symplectic integrators, or what they call geometric integrators. And it is very more powerful than the gradient integrators because you preserve some invariance. So you preserve the energy for PDE. And for example, in meteorology, they are now using symplectic integrators because you can predict a very PDE complex system on a very long period because you have preserving some invariant. And one invariant is the energy. Recently, at the International Congress of Mathematics, I don't remember the name of a very famous US mathematician, has also introduced symplectic integrators for optimization, not for machine learning, but for optimization. So these gradients on this flow are purely intrinsic. They are invariant by change of parametrization, and they are preserving some structure and some invariant of the problem. And so it robustified the different gradients.
Okay, good.
And the last one is, it is very elegant and beautiful, but it's not very attractive for all of you.
Okay. So are there other questions? If not, I have maybe two comments. My first comment is, what about the computational aspect? So what you've been showing is more basically a continuous, let's say, formulation. And what are the today? So of course you talked about this. I forgot her name. The Inria girl, which works also, which has developed the Python stuff. But what about the computational aspects of this approach? I mean, we have today software that we can, I mean, is there a computational, I mean, also for you, Frédéric, machine learning Lie group, I would say, approach, and are there softwares available that we can play with?
So, can you hear me? Yeah. For the equivalent neural network part, so there are many GitHub repository where you can find some implementation of the algorithm. So for now, actually, the approach is quite recent. It was introduced in 2016. So in the literature, what you can find basically is some example to show that this technology can be used in order to improve existing algorithms. So as of now, the implementation are really some kind of POC. They have not been really optimized. And in particular, the limiting point is really about the computation of the generalized convolution operator. So if you look at your software for now, when you do CNN, the convolution is implemented with Fourier transform at a very low level on the GPU. So for now, there is no such things for the GCNN. And in terms of algorithmic, also, for some group, we do know how to implement the generalized Fourier operator. Like if you take spherical harmonics or these kind of things, there are formulas, and it's only a matter of porting that onto a GPU. However, for more complex group, like the one Frédéric was talking about, SU11, we don't even have really good algorithmics for the generalized version of the Fourier transform. So we have been looking at that. We have the paper at the GSI conference where we try to discuss on how to make the computation efficient, but then there is still a step, which is to put this computation onto the GPU card. And for now, we don't have that. So basically, if you do benchmarking between a CNN on TensorFlow and the code that are available on CUDA, you are going to be very disappointed in terms of performances comparison.
Okay. Yes, concerning my part, there is also some open problem for the discretization because also in mechanics, they are looking for efficient symplectic integrators, preserving the Casimir function, the coadjoint orbit, and so on. So but it's also exciting for a researcher because there is many problems which are not yet addressed for the discretization of the chain. But we know theoretically and by first test with not optimized chain that we could improve performances of the classical one. And what is important for us is also for qualification and validation of algorithms, as presented by my colleagues Juliette Mathioli in our French program Confiance.ai, what we call yes, self-by-design neural networks.
Okay. Yeah, I think this responds to the comment of Amor. Amor was talking about comparing the computational complexity of ML with the classical, I mean, your approach with classical algorithms. I think you answered this, I mean, in the sense of CNN and how it's done today and what is available. I'll finish just with the comment. I mean, you've been presenting on behalf of Thales, and so many people are wondering how far are these things already implemented within the products of Thales, or you're still at the research level. You've been talking about typically localization and navigation. This is of high interest for TII, for example, where basically, of course, the issues of drones are important. Are these things already in the pipeline in your case, or it's still at the research level?
For Lie Group, what we have studied previously, it's how to extend Kalman filter with Lie Group, which I've developed with Sylvia Bonabel at École des Mines de Paris. So I invite you, Merwan, to invite Sylvia to give a talk. And no, this approach is not yet applied in our product, but it is in a research step. But we have different programs, military program on civil programs. So Pierre-Yves is involved in civil studies, and we have just launched a French program to deploy AI on our equipment that will address this topic. We have proved that it works, and then is to develop the good numerical chain on test on reach TRL 5 or 6. But it is very active. If you look at the geometric deep learning community, so in ELIS, which is a European network with we have a working group on geometric deep learning with Max Welling, Michael Bronstein, and Cohen.
Yeah, I saw a couple of work of Max Welling within your line. So yeah, I see that it's getting a lot of interest. Okay, good. Are there other questions from the audience? Okay, if not, I think we passed a bit of time. Thank you again, both of you. I think it's very interesting what you showed here, and also these new approaches. And I'll be coming back to you, Frédéric, on some of the aspects. Thank you again for your talk and for your availability